Before we begin, take a moment to arrive. Unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders, let your breath slow just a little. You don't need to do anything here, and you don't need to analyze yourself. You don't need to fix your sensitivity. You need to just listen. Because if you are an empath or a highly sensitive, intuitive person, this episode isn't about convincing you that you feel deeply, because you already know that. This episode is about why you feel everything, biologically, neurologically, and energetically, and why that sensitivity is not a liability, but an advanced perceptual system that was never explained to you properly. Welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of Intuition on Tap. The empath's brain, why you feel everything. If you've ever walked into a room and instantly felt the emotional temperature shift, if you've ever absorbed someone else's distress before they spoke a single word, or if you've spent years being told that you're too sensitive without ever being given a coherent explanation for why you experience the world you do, I'm going to give you language for something you've always known intuitively. Because today we're talking about the empath's brain. Not as a personality quirk, not as a spiritual badge, and certainly not as a flaw, but as a distinct perceptual and nervous system configuration that operates at both a biological and an energetic level. And when you understand that configuration properly, a lot of self-judgment falls away. Let's begin. Empathy is not emotional fragility. It is perceptual capacity. Empathy is often reduced to compassion, kindness, or even emotional intelligence, but those are expressions of empathy, not its mechanism. Empathy at its core is a capacity for attunement. It is the ability of your nervous system to detect, to receive, and to process emotional and relational information from your environment with a high degree of sensitivity and accuracy. For empaths, this attunement is not something you consciously turn on. It's always running, which means you're not just responding to what's happening, you're responding to what's emerging, and that distinction matters. Mirror neurons, or why observation becomes experience. So from a neurological perspective, one of the most important contributors to empathic perception is the mirror neuron system. Mirror neurons activate when you perform an action, but they also activate when you observe someone else performing that same action. Over time, research has shown that these neurons don't just mirror physical movement, they also participate in the internal simulation of emotional states. So what does that mean? In other words, when someone else is experiencing distress, your brain doesn't merely recognize that distress, it partially recreates it for you. This is why empathic people often describe feeling emotions in their body before they've consciously identified them in someone else. As an empath, your nervous system is running a simulation before your cognitive mind has had time to label what's happening. For empaths, mirror neuron activation tends to be stronger and faster, meaning emotional information is processed quickly, deeply, and often below the level of conscious awareness. You don't think your way into feeling it, you feel your way into understanding what's going on around you. Limbic resonance, or the emotional system synchronized before language. Now, layer this with limbic resonance. The limbic system is the emotional center of the brain, governing attachment, mood regulation, threat detection, and also emotional memory. Limbic resonance refers to the way nervous systems attune to one another emotionally, particularly in relational or social contexts. So, what this means is empaths don't simply resonate with individuals, they resonate with fields, with rooms, with groups, with family systems, with workplaces, with online environments. This is why you can feel unsettled without knowing why, or exhausted after being in an emotionally incoherent space, even if nothing overtly bad happened. Just think about how you feel after doom scrolling for hours on end. Your nervous system is responding to emotional data that hasn't yet become explicit. This isn't imagination, it's pre-verbal processing. The insula, where intuition becomes bodily knowing. Another key structure in the empathic brain is the insula, an area involved in interoception, emotional awareness, and the integration of bodily sensation with emotional meaning within the brain. People with high empathic capacity often show increased insular activation, which means emotion doesn't stay abstract, it becomes somatic. And in other words, you feel it in your body. You don't just think something feels off. Your chest tightens, your stomach drops, your energy dips, or your body becomes restless. This is one of the reasons empaths are often dismissed as quote unquote emotional, when in reality they are highly embodied perceivers. Your intuition doesn't float above the body, your intuition speaks through the body. Sensory processing sensitivity, or high resolution nervous systems. Many empaths also exhibit what researchers refer to as sensory processing sensitivity. I know that's a mouthful. A trait associated with deeper processing of sensory input, heightened emotional responsiveness, and increased sensitivity to subtle stimuli. This doesn't mean your nervous system is inefficient. It actually means it is high resolution. You process more information more deeply with less filtering at the sensory and emotional level. So that depth of processing is what gives rise to insight, empathy, and also intuitive intelligence. But it also requires appropriate regulation and containment. Without that, the system overloads, not because it's broken, but because it was never taught how to manage its own capacity. When I used to speak publicly a lot, particularly to do with empaths, I would have dozens of people come up to me after my talk. And unfortunately, they had already found themselves in the place of feeling very, very broken because they did not have the tools or the strategies or the education to be able to manage their high resolution energy systems. So it's really common if you feel this way. Don't feel, again, like something's broken. It's just something to learn and do differently. The energetic layer, perception beyond the observable. Now, here's where we need to hold both science and lived experience at the same time, because many empaths are not only neurologically sensitive, they are energetically perceptive. You sense emotional incongruence. You pick up on intention beneath words. You feel shifts in coherence before behavior actually changes. This doesn't require belief, it requires observation. And energetically speaking, empathic systems tend to be more permeable, not because of poor boundaries, although sometimes this can be it, but because perception is prioritized over defense. I'm going to say that again. Perception is prioritized over defense. The challenge arises when permeability exists without containment. And sensitivity without containment feels overwhelming. Sensitivity with containment becomes discernment. Why empaths burn out and why it's not because you care too much. Empathy itself does not cause burnout. What causes burnout is chronic dysregulation. Many empaths learned early in life to remain externally oriented. So, what that means is they scan emotional environments for safety, for approval, or for predictability. Over time, this trains the nervous system to stay in a low-level state of vigilance. You're not relaxed, but you're not in crisis either. You're simply on all the time. Without regular discharge, grounding, and internal orientation, emotional information accumulates. And this is when empathy turns from insight into exhaustion. Not because you're too sensitive, but because you're carrying information that was never meant to be stored long term. Now, amplify that if you grew up in an abusive childhood home or you had narcissistic parents, that low-level vigilance may have turned into high-level vigilance or hypervigilance. Sensitivity is not fragility, it is advanced awareness. So let's be very clear about this. Sensitivity is not fragility, it is advanced perceptual awareness. A high-resolution system detects nuance, subtlety, and complexity that others miss. That capacity becomes a liability only when it is misunderstood or unsupported. But when it's regulated, empathic sensitivity creates deep emotional intelligence, strong intuitive clarity, ethical leadership, a healing presence, and relational depth. The same system that overwhelms you when uncontained becomes your greatest strength when it is anchored. Let's do a short guided regulation exercise. Containment for the empathic nervous system. I want to guide you through this practice, not to shut down your sensitivity, but to give it some structure. This is about containment, not contraction. Make sure that you're in a safe space to do this, and certainly don't do it while you're driving. If you can, place one hand on your chest and one on your lower abdomen. Let your breath slow naturally without forcing it. And as you inhale, feel the rise beneath your hands. And as you exhale, feel the settling of yourself down into your body. And now bring your awareness to the physical boundary of your body, the edges of your arms, the weight of your legs, the contact points beneath you. Notice where you are. Imagine or simply sense a soft but defined perimeter around your body. Not a wall, not a shield, just a clear sense of where your system ends. Because this boundary allows awareness without absorption. Now ask yourself, quietly or in your mind, what is mine to feel right now? Stay with what arises. Then ask, what am I carrying that doesn't belong to me? You don't need to analyze. And perhaps you might choose now to allow your nervous system to respond. And if something releases through breath, sensation, or emotion, that's simply regulation happening. Stay present. Stay contained. Stay with yourself. Take one final, slow, deep breath. And when you're ready, gently reorient to the room that you're in, fully coming back into this time and space. Reclaiming your empathic brain. Your empathic brain was never meant to be shut down, numbed, or overridden. It was meant to be understood. So when you stop fighting your sensitivity and start working with your nervous system, intuition actually becomes clearer, becomes easier to hear, to feel, to know. Your emotional load decreases, and your capacity to discern rather than absorb strengthens naturally. You don't need to become less sensitive. You need to become more anchored, more present in your space. And that's what we'll continue exploring together. As we continue this season, we'll explore how to work with your empathic intelligence, not against it, so your intuition becomes clarity instead of overload. And just a gentle reminder, your sensitivity isn't the problem, it's the information. If you've enjoyed this episode and know someone it might help, please do feel free to like, share, and subscribe. This helps me help even more sensitives. And until next time, make a commitment to be unapologetically you.